My name is Brad Sullivan. I'm the Chair of the Board of Finance. Welcome to the Board of Finance public hearing for the proposed budgets for the town of Clinton for fiscal year 2013-2014. Like I do every year, I'd like to just begin by commenting about the process that the Board of Finance engages in every year to prepare these proposed operating budgets. Every winter, the town's departments, including the school district, begin from zero and create spreadsheets that include the specific department's estimate of expenditures for the next fiscal year. This includes reviewing what was spent last year and what the current expenditures are for the departments. These estimates are reviewed by the selectmen and the first selectman, and then reviewed with the department heads at several budget workshops in the month of February. In addition to the department's estimates, the Finance Board also reviews last year's audit report, status of the town's revenues, and the proposed capital projects budget. We have a separate committee that deals with the capital expenditures. Then the proposed budget is finalized by the Finance Board and sent here for public comment. At this point in the process, the Finance Board has the discretion to increase or reduce virtually every aspect of the budget and send it to the annual budget meeting, which at the annual budget meeting we retire a referendum and we have a referendum vote. This year that vote will be on May 8th. The town of Clinton is very fortunate to have a cadre of dedicated resident volunteers who do their best to serve the interests of our community. We live here too. I can speak only for myself when I say that I don't live under a rock. I have actual knowledge of our neighbors and our friends and our family and other residents who have had a lot of difficulty and have struggled mightily with finances over the last 4 or 5 years. We are not ignoring that fact. The residential tax base, we know, shoulders a large burden of the annual tax levy. As such, we have once again collectively significantly reduced the capital projects requests by more than half. In addition, we have continued to accept the Board of Education's proposals to apply a portion of its operating surplus to capital projects. This in turn reduces the amount of the Board of Education's capital projects requests. We have tried to do that on the town side of the budget too. For example, the new fire department vehicle was paid for with surplus. The substantial and unexpected costs for Irene, Sandy, and the recent blizzard were paid with surplus. And incidentally, FEMA will be reimbursing the town for up to 75% of these costs, and in some instances, a little more. The Finance Board has also appropriated $250,000 to the revenue side of the town's operating budget. Thankfully, we have not had to utilize this revenue item during my tenure. Common sense tells us that surpluses are better than deficits, and we can debate the philosophy of appropriating surplus to revenues and the risk it poses. The bottom line is that we have adopted a policy where we are trying to keep an undesignated fund balance, or a rainy day fund balance, approaching 10% of our total operating budgets. We're close to that floor right now. The most recent balance I have indicates that the undesignated fund balance is $4,708,476. And that takes into account the vote that happened about a half an hour ago at the public meeting, which Bob Curry provided to me. Thank you, Bob. If this budget is adopted by the taxpayers, then that 10% floor will be approximately $4.7 million. The mill rate would most likely be set at 25.67, which is a 0.49 increase over the current year. These budgets represent a responsible estimate of next year's expenditures based upon available information. We can disagree about what is enough, what is too much, but ultimately the town of Clinton and its residents must invest in our future. Unfortunately, this budget doesn't do that. Having budget battles and rejected budgets over $150,000, $600,000, or even $1.5 million in the context of a nearly $47 million operating budget is folly. We must attract business, industry, tourism to Clinton. Only with a shared and proportionate industrial, commercial, and residential tax base will Clinton flourish. I know that we all want the same things: prosperity for all, a sound educational system, a safe and healthy community, and peace. In order to get there, we need to start now. Not next year or 5 years from now. I truly believe that these people sitting up here, as well as all of the other volunteers and boards and commissions in the town of Clinton, care deeply. Even though not everybody always agrees with everything that we might do or say. I hope that you'll support these budgets on May 8th. As far as how the public hearing will run, we'll start with the educational budget first. If you'd like to be heard, please address your comments to the board. This isn't a debate. Everybody will have an opportunity to speak once on each budget, the education first and then the town. We just ask that you come up, provide us with your name and address. Mary Scatino's here, our clerk. And we'll give you the microphone. It works well, as I think everybody can hear me. And that's the way we'll proceed. So, with that, who wants to start? It'll be a short night. Mr. Cimino.
Vince Cimino, 161 East Main. It seems to be the practice that each year the goal is to increase the budget and thereby increase the mill rate. But last year I was here and I proposed an alternate budget that would have resulted in a balanced budget. And the reason given why that wouldn't work was that surplus funds supposedly could not be used to balance the budget. And I disagree completely. We had a surplus of, in recent years, $800,000 and $1.1 million. And I'd like the Board of Finance to explain, please, why those surplus funds can't be used to balance the next year's budget. With regard to this year's budget, I think that the Board of Education budget could be lowered by approximately $500,000 without the Board of Education feeling any negative repercussions. We've seen nothing but budget surpluses in recent years. The most recent number that I've heard for this year's budget surplus for the Board of Education is approximately $860,000. And I recommend that surplus be returned to the town, as it must be, and then those funds be used to balance this upcoming budget. And I think that, as a matter of fact, I believe we could end up with an end result of being able to lower the mill rate, not by a lot, but in today's economy, I think that anything we can do to lower the mill rate would be helpful. I also think that in upcoming years, when we're going to see new revals, property values can only be lower. What's going to happen then is you're going to get decreased revenue from property taxes, and I think we need to start preparing for that, because at that point, mill rate increases might be inevitable if we continue to be unable to attract new business and more corporate tax. So I would recommend a $500,000 decrease in the Board of Ed budget, the $860,000 surplus from last year's budget be used to balance this year's budget, and I'd like to see a balanced budget be the goal every year. Thank you.
Anyone else? Jack, do you want to comment about a $500,000 reduction to the Board of Ed budget?
Sure. Jack Cross, 6 Martin Drive, Superintendent of Schools. The suggestion for reducing the budget by over $500,000 would impact the state's requirement with regard to minimum budget requirements, which would only allow us to reduce the budget below the previous year's budget by up to $200,000 if in fact that were warranted at this point. $500,000 would put us below the minimum budget requirements and put us in a deficit situation with the State Department of Education.
anybody else want to be heard on the Board of Ed budget? Please.
Thank you, Kurt Carr. I'm at 9 Westbury County South. I think your facts are not quite right. The minimum budget requirement this year was a little bit over $30 million. The other thing is that you can reduce the budget by $3,000 for every drop in enrollment. So it'd be another $81,000 that you could have reduced the minimum budget requirement. There is nothing in the state minimum budget requirement that would keep you from reducing the budget by what Mr. Semino suggested. And I really would appreciate you being factual in the future. Thank you.
It's not a debate.
Without getting into a pissing match, I'm really tired of having individuals who are willing to steal documents from town functions, give us credible information.
Sit down.
The reality is this: there is a minimum budget requirement. And the number that I shared with you would be the number, the maximum that would be able to be, the budget would be able to be reduced for this year.
I thought it wasn't a debate.
Anyone else? All right, hearing no one else, we'll move over to the town budget. Would anybody like to be heard on the town budget? This is your opportunity to be heard. This is the fastest. Oh, okay, Mr. Carr.
Finance. In spite of defeating town budgets and assurances of tight budgets, Clinton continues to produce large surpluses in both the town and education budgets year after year. These surpluses illustrate that budgets can be scaled down to real need with no degradation of service, staff cuts, or other painful consequences. I have a Board of Finance a table that shows these annual budget surpluses going back to fiscal year 2011 for both the town and the Board of Education. The current legal notice of the town of Clinton and education budget reflects estimated expenses for the current year that are clearly inaccurate. Virtually every budget line reflects that the current year's actual spending will not vary from what is budgeted. Yet in a memo that is attached to this from Robert Curry to Jack Cross, obtained through the Freedom of Information Act, request of the public certified salaries line will go, it's $371,000 in surplus this year. It's not reflected on the budgets that you've been given. Likewise, the employee medical expenses project a $490,000 surplus. Neither of these have been reflected in the budget that you've been given. Budget surpluses benefit no one, in spite of what you were suggesting in your opening remarks. Not students, not teachers, not administrators, not public employees, and certainly not taxpayers.
Mr. Carr, are you addressing the town or the Board of Education,
I'm
which I believe is what
I'm addressing-
Chairman Sullivan asked you to address, the town? Rule of order, please.
I'm addressing both.
Let him talk. His camera's running.
But they unnecessarily inflate tax rates at a time when Clinton's grand list is in a long-term decline, with the collapse of the $4 million Unilever warehouse will further adversely affect that grand list. As a consequence, Clinton's tax rates have become increasingly uncompetitive with neighboring shoreline communities. The first selectman can repeat the fiction that Clinton continues to have the lowest tax rates on the shoreline, and we will continue that process as many times as he likes, but it's simply not true. No one pays the per capita taxes. Tax burden is dictated by mill rate, and there's no comfort to be derived from depressed property values that are in part a product of these high tax rates and only marginally mitigated. Comparatively high property taxes put Clinton at a competitive disadvantage, driving down property values discouraging commercial development, and needlessly burdening taxpayers. Even for Clinton citizens who do not pay property taxes directly, the adverse effect on commercial development reduces the local job opportunities that Clinton's comparative drop in payroll between 2005 and 2010 illustrates, and there's a graph here showing that. This is a burden borne by all of Clinton's stakeholders and not just taxpayers. Clinton's education budget commands 70% of the budget, and associated surpluses have grown in spite of a long-term decline in enrollment. As pointed out in the previous memo to Clinton Public Schools, enrollment projections have not been adjusted in at least 3 years and do not reflect lower than projected kindergarten enrollment for cohorts in subsequent years, or the precipitous drop in birth rates starting in 2010. But even using Clinton Public Schools enrollment trends that they provide future projections, it is clear that the budget have grown and are intended to grow even as the needs decline. The time has come to bring the education budget in scale with the need. Based on recent surpluses, this budget can be adjusted down, I would say $600,000, not $500,000, with no adverse effect on students, teachers, administration, or education. You were told last year and the 2 years prior that if education budget is not rubber stamped, students and education would suffer. Clearly that was not true then, and it is not true now. Had the education budgets for fiscal year 2011 and 2012 passed on the first ballot, budget surpluses would have been $1.2 million, or 4% each year. The current state, now I'll get to the state minimum budget requirement for Clinton, is $30.1 million. The declining enrollment will reduce the amount by $81,000 in 2014, a reduction of $600,000 from the current year's education budget of $31.3 million to $30.7 million, it's an error on that, to $30.7 million, is well above the state's threshold requirement. Without the benefit of current surplus projections for the town, it is premature to make a firm proposal, but based on the size of previous recent years' surpluses, a minimum $400,000 budget decrease appears to be possible with no necessary impact on staffing, service levels, or programs. From 1995 to 2010, Clinton budgets passed on the first ballot, according to a report New Haven Register on May 26. That is as it should be. The Clinton Taxpayers Association does not frivolously or irresponsibly call for budget cuts or for defeated budgets. Last year, the CTA mistakenly supported the school budget as information about the surplus was suppressed, and we were told that $383,000 of stimulus money used to pay teachers in fiscal 2012 would be reflected in the state's minimum budget requirement for fiscal 2013. In fact, the MBR in fiscal 2013 decreased $56,000. It would be my pleasure to report budgets sent to referendum in May. If they are scaled back to reflect need and are designed to eliminate most of these surpluses. The Board of Finance, as a matter of routine practice, adds 1.2% of the budgets as a contingency. That should be adequate, and budget surpluses should be otherwise cease to exist. Therefore, please consider reducing year-over-year 2013-14 education budget by $600,000, the town budget by $400,000, while the mill rate comparisons would likely remain adverse. It would be a step in the right direction and would demonstrate good faith to Clinton taxpayers and other stakeholders. If it ignited a growth in the grand list by strengthening property values and attracting commercial development, it could reverse the negative feedback loop that will otherwise drive taxes to the roof, and it would end the string of budget deficits that started in 2010, or budget surpluses that started in 2010, respectfully. Thank you.
We're talking about the town budget. Would anybody like to comment on the town budget? Anyone? Anybody else from the Board of Finance have any comments for the public before I close the meeting? Public hearing. think we need to do a motion. Thank you, everybody, for coming out. Good night.